Emma turned the key, home 2 hours early from her marketing job. The house felt strangely quiet. She found Michael in his office, phone clutched tight. His face went pale when he saw her. "Who's Jessica texting you heart emojis?" Emma's voice trembled as she read the screen over his shoulder. "It's not what you think," Michael stammered, but his eyes couldn't meet hers. The guilt was written all over his face. The front door opened. Jessica walked in like she owned the place, freezing when she saw Emma holding Michael's phone. "My own sister?" Emma's voice cracked. "How could you do this to me? To our family?" Little Lily appeared at the top of the stairs, tears streaming down her face as her parents' voices grew louder. "I love her, Emma. I'm sorry, but I can't pretend anymore. Jessica makes me feel alive again. Get out of my house." Emma screamed at Jessica. "This is my home, my family." Michael stepped between them. "No, Emma. Jessica stays. If anyone's leaving, it's you. Just last Christmas, they were the perfect family." Emma remembered Michael's promises of forever. "Till death do us part," he had whispered at their altar 12 years ago. Now those words felt like lies. With shaking hands, Emma threw clothes into a suitcase. 8 years of marriage, reduced to one bag. "Mommy, where are we going? Why can't we stay home?" Lily sobbed, clinging to Emma's dress. "Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes, sweetheart. But Mommy will always take care of you." Michael watched from the doorway, Jessica's hand in his. Neither offered to help with the luggage. Rain poured down as Emma loaded their car. The weather matched her broken heart perfectly. Through tears, Emma drove into the night, not knowing where life would take them next. Behind them, Michael and Jessica celebrated their victory, unaware of what Emma would become. But this wasn't the end of Emma's story. It was just the beginning of something extraordinary. Before we continue this incredible journey, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. And if this story already has you hooked, hit that like button and subscribe for more amazing stories that will inspire your heart. Grace opened her door at midnight to find Emma and Lily soaked from the rain. Without hesitation, she pulled them both into a warm embrace. "Oh, honey, what happened?" Grace whispered, already knowing something terrible had occurred. Emma collapsed into her best friend's arms, unable to speak through her sobs. Lily clung to her mother's coat, shivering and confused about why they were standing in the rain at Aunt Grace's house instead of sleeping in their own beds. Inside Grace's living room, Emma couldn't catch her breath. Her chest felt tight, her hands wouldn't stop shaking, and the room seemed to spin around her. Grace recognized the signs of a panic attack immediately. She guided Emma to the couch, speaking in gentle tones while rubbing her back. "Breathe with me, Emma. In and out, slowly," Grace coached, having experienced her own share of heartbreak years earlier. The panic gradually subsided, but the emotional pain remained raw and overwhelming. As Grace tucked Lily into the guest bed, the little girl's innocent questions pierced Emma's heart. "Mommy, when are we going home? Did Daddy not want us anymore? Why was Aunt Jessica there so late?" Emma struggled to find age-appropriate answers while fighting back fresh tears. How do you explain betrayal to an 8-year-old? How do you tell your daughter that her father chose someone else over their family? Emma settled for saying that sometimes adults need time apart to figure things out. For the next 3 days, Emma barely left the guest bedroom. She stared at the ceiling, replaying every moment of her marriage, searching for signs she had missed. The betrayal felt like a physical wound that wouldn't heal. Grace brought her meals that went untouched, and Emma felt like she was drowning in her own grief. She questioned everything about herself. Was she not attractive enough, not interesting enough, not enough of anything? The darkness seemed endless, and Emma wondered if she would ever feel whole again. Grace stepped into the role of temporary guardian for Lily, making her breakfast, helping with homework, and trying to maintain some normalcy in the child's disrupted world. She drove Lily to school and picked her up, shielding her from the worst of Emma's emotional breakdown. Grace's own heart ached watching her best friend suffer, but she knew Emma needed time to process the devastation. When Lily asked where her mommy was, Grace gently explained that mommy was very sad and needed rest to feel better. In her darkest moments, Emma found herself angry at God. Where were you when my marriage was falling apart? She whispered bitterly to the ceiling. I've been faithful. I've followed your word. I've tried to be a good wife and mother. How could you let this happen to me? The silence felt deafening, and Emma wondered if her prayers had ever been heard at all. Her faith, once the cornerstone of her life, now felt like a house built on sand, crumbling under the weight of her circumstances. Pastor Benjamin arrived on the fourth day at Grace's urgent request. He sat quietly beside Emma's bed, not rushing to offer easy answers or platitudes. I'm not here to explain why this happened, he said gently. I'm here to sit with you in your pain. His presence brought a strange comfort that Emma hadn't expected. When she finally spoke, her voice was hoarse from crying. I don't know how to do this, Pastor. I don't know how to be alone, how to start over, how to explain this to Lily. Pastor Benjamin opened his worn Bible to the book of Job, reading aloud about a man who lost everything but never lost his faith. Job questioned God, just like you're doing now, he explained. God doesn't punish us for our honest emotions or our difficult questions. Sometimes he allows suffering not as punishment, but as preparation for something greater than we can imagine. The words didn't take away Emma's pain, but they planted a small seed of hope that maybe, somehow, this devastation could have a purpose. That evening, Emma picked up her Bible for the first time since the confrontation. She turned to the Psalms, finding comfort in David's raw emotions and honest prayers. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. She read from Psalm 34, verse 18. The words seemed to speak directly to her soul. For the first time in days, Emma felt a tiny flicker of peace. Maybe God hadn't abandoned her after all. Maybe he was closest to her in this valley of shadows. On the fifth morning, Emma finally got out of bed before noon. Grace watched hopefully as her friend showered and dressed in clean clothes for the first time since arriving. Emma's eyes were still red and swollen, but there was something different in her posture, a slight straightening of her shoulders that suggested the beginning of healing. I need to figure out what comes next, Emma told Grace quietly. For Lily's sake and for mine. It was the first forward-looking statement she had made since her world collapsed, and Grace felt a surge of hope for her friend's future. Emma sat in the sterile law office, her hands trembling as she signed the divorce papers. Attorney James Morrison explained the harsh reality. I have to tell you, Emma, this won't be easy. Your husband has already moved significant funds from your joint accounts. The words hit her like physical blows. She had trusted Michael completely with their finances, never imagining he would leave her virtually penniless. What about the house? She asked weakly. Since it's in both names, you'll need to fight for your share, which could take months or even years, the lawyer replied grimly. Looking at her personal account balance, Emma felt sick. After 12 years of marriage, she had barely $3,000 to her name. She had always focused on her part-time marketing job, while Michael handled the big picture finances. Now she realized how naive and dependent she had been. The credit cards were maxed out. Apparently, Michael had been spending heavily in the weeks before the confrontation. Emma stared at the numbers, wondering how she would afford even basic necessities for herself and Lily, let alone legal fees for the divorce. 2 weeks later, Emma's worst nightmare became reality when she ran into Michael and Jessica at Riverside Market, the small town's main grocery store. They were shopping together like a normal couple, Jessica hanging on Michael's arm and laughing at something he whispered in her ear. Emma tried to duck down another aisle, but it was too late. Several neighbors had already spotted the awkward encounter. The whole town would be talking within hours about seeing the cheating husband and home-wrecking sister flaunting their relationship in public. As Emma hurried through her shopping, she felt eyes following her everywhere. Mrs. Henderson from down the street whispered loudly to her companion, "That's the poor woman whose husband left her for her own sister." Can you imagine? Another neighbor simply stared with a mixture of pity and morbid curiosity. Emma's cheeks burned with embarrassment as she realized her personal tragedy had become the town's entertainment. She had lived in Riverside Falls her entire life, and now she felt like a stranger in her own community. Sunday morning at First Baptist Church brought a fresh wave of humiliation. Emma noticed how some longtime friends suddenly seemed very interested in their hymnals when she walked by. The Johnsons, who had been dinner guests just months before, actually changed seats to avoid sitting near her. But thankfully, not everyone turned away. Mrs. Patterson, a widow who had faced her own share of hardships, squeezed Emma's hand warmly. "Hold your head high, dear," she whispered. "You've done nothing wrong." Several other women offered similar support, reminding Emma that true Christian love still existed. The worst part was social media. Jessica had no shame about posting photos of herself and Michael together. Romantic dinners, weekend getaways, even pictures in what used to be Emma's living room. Each notification felt like a knife twisting in Emma's heart. "Living my best life with my soulmate," read one caption that made Emma physically ill. She finally deleted all social media apps from her phone, unable to bear seeing her sister's triumphant posts about stealing her husband. The digital reminders of her betrayal were just too painful to endure. The hardest moments came when Lily asked innocent questions that broke Emma's heart. "Mommy, why do people look at us funny at the store? Did we do something bad?" The 8-year-old couldn't understand why her world had suddenly become so complicated and uncomfortable. Emma knelt down to Lily's eye level, choosing her words carefully. "Sometimes when families go through changes, people don't know what to say, sweetheart. But we haven't done anything wrong. We're just learning to be brave together." She hoped her daughter couldn't see how much effort it took to sound confident and reassuring. That evening, Emma opened her Bible to the story of Jesus forgiving those who crucified him. "Even when people hurt us really badly, God wants us to forgive them," she explained to Lily, though the words felt almost impossible to believe in her current state. "Does that mean we have to forgive Daddy and Aunt Jessica?" Lily asked with the brutal honesty of childhood. Emma's throat tightened as she replied, "Yes, sweetheart. It might take time, but forgiveness is what Jesus teaches us." She wondered if she would ever truly be able to practice what she was preaching to her daughter. Back at the attorney's office, James Morrison delivered more devastating news. "The divorce process will likely take 18 to 24 months, given your husband's tactics. He's hired an aggressive firm that specializes in protecting assets." Emma felt overwhelmed by the legal jargon and complicated procedures. "What does that mean for us day to day?" she asked, dreading the answer. "It means you'll need to survive on very limited resources while we fight for what's rightfully yours. I'll do everything I can, but I won't lie to you. This is going to be a long, expensive battle." Despite the overwhelming challenges, something began to shift inside Emma. As she tucked Lily into bed that night, she made a silent promise to herself and her daughter. She wouldn't let Michael and Jessica's betrayal define the rest of their lives. She wouldn't become bitter and broken. Somehow, some way, she would build a new life for herself and Lily, one that didn't depend on anyone else's choices or actions. The road ahead looked impossibly difficult, but Emma felt the first stirring of determination replacing her despair. She had survived the worst betrayal imaginable. Now it was time to discover what she was truly capable of. Emma stared at Grace's borrowed laptop, its screen displaying her hastily created LinkedIn profile. With trembling fingers, she typed "financial consultant," available for freelance projects. She had a business degree that had been gathering dust for years while she focused on part-time work and motherhood. Now, that degree might be her lifeline. "I can do this," she whispered to herself, though doubt crept in immediately. It had been so long since she'd worked full-time, and the business world had changed dramatically. But with legal fees mounting and basic expenses looming, she had no choice but to try. Her first potential client was Margaret Shun, a recently divorced teacher from the church who had heard about Emma's situation through the prayer circle. "I don't know anything about managing money on my own," Margaret confessed over coffee at Penny's diner. "My ex-husband handled everything, and now I'm drowning in paperwork and confusion." Emma felt a surge of recognition. She understood this helplessness intimately. As she helped Margaret organize her finances and create a budget, Emma discovered something surprising. She was naturally good at this. Her methodical approach and genuine empathy created an instant connection. Word spread quickly through the church and community about Emma's helpful approach to financial consulting. Soon, she was meeting with Linda Morrison, whose husband had died suddenly, leaving her with insurance paperwork and investment accounts she didn't understand. Then came Sarah Williams, going through an ugly divorce and needing help protecting her assets. Each woman's story resonated with Emma's own struggles, and she found deep satisfaction in helping them navigate their financial challenges. For the first time in weeks, Emma felt useful and capable again. Meanwhile, Lily was adjusting to Riverside Elementary's third-grade class after transferring from her previous school across town. The transition was difficult. New teacher, new classmates, and the whispered comments about her family situation that somehow reached even the playground. "Why can't I go back to my old school with Jenny and Marcus?" Lily asked sadly as Emma helped with math homework. Emma's heart ached knowing that even simple things like Lily's friendships had become casualties of Michael's choices. "Sometimes we have to make new starts, sweetie. New friends can be just as wonderful as old ones." Emma established a new morning routine with Lily that became the anchor of their disrupted world. Each day began with reading a Bible verse together and sharing a simple prayer. "Dear God, thank you for this new day and for keeping us safe," Emma would begin, and Lily would add her own innocent petitions. "And please help Daddy to be happy, and help Mommy not to be sad anymore." These moments of spiritual connection became Emma's source of strength, reminding her that even in chaos, some foundations remain solid. The routine gave both mother and daughter a sense of stability and hope. During her private prayer times, Emma began working through the complex process of forgiveness. It wasn't the dramatic, instant transformation she had expected, but rather a gradual releasing of the bitter anger that had been consuming her. "I forgive Michael," she would whisper, though the words often fell hollow at first. "I forgive Jessica." Some days the forgiveness felt real and freeing. Other days it felt impossible and forced. But Emma kept practicing it like a spiritual discipline, trusting that God would eventually transform her heart, even when her emotions lagged behind her willpower. After 3 weeks of successful consulting work, Emma had earned enough money for a security deposit on a small apartment. Standing in the tiny 2-bedroom unit on Maple Street, she felt both excited and terrified. The apartment was modest, worn carpet, outdated appliances, and paper-thin walls, but it represented something monumental: independence. "It's perfect," she told the landlord, though her voice quivered slightly. This would be the first home that was truly hers, chosen by her, paid for by her own efforts. It was simultaneously empowering and overwhelming to take this step toward self-reliance. Moving day brought a mixture of emotions as Emma and Lily unpacked their few belongings in their new home. Lily explored every corner of her small bedroom, while Emma arranged their modest furniture. "It's smaller than our old house," Lily observed with typical childhood honesty. "But it feels cozy, doesn't it?" Emma replied, trying to focus on the positive aspects. Grace had helped them shop at thrift stores for basic necessities, and several church families had donated household items. It wasn't much, but it was theirs, and Emma felt a growing sense of pride in what she was building from nothing. That evening, as Lily slept in her new bedroom, Emma spread her consulting work across the dining table. She was building something more than just a source of income. She was discovering skills and strengths she never knew she possessed. Each client's financial puzzle challenged her to think creatively and strategically. For the first time since the confrontation with Michael, Emma felt genuinely excited about the future rather than just surviving each day. She was creating a career that mattered, helping women who faced similar challenges to rebuild their lives with dignity and hope. As Emma stood at her new kitchen window watching the sunrise over their modest neighborhood, she realized something profound had shifted inside her. The woman who had been devastated and helpless just weeks ago was transforming into someone stronger and more capable. She still felt deep pain from the betrayal, and the road ahead remained uncertain and challenging. But for the first time since her world collapsed, Emma felt genuine hope. She was building a new life not just for survival, but for growth, purpose, and eventual healing. This was only the beginning of her transformation. 3 months into her new life, Emma's consulting business was growing beyond her wildest expectations. She had invested in a professional website and created the brand New Beginnings Financial, a name that reflected both her services and her personal journey. The logo featured a sunrise breaking through clouds, symbolizing hope after storms. Client testimonials filled her homepage. "Emma saved my financial future," wrote Margaret Shun. "She understands what we're going through because she's been there too," added Linda Morrison. Emma's calendar was booking weeks in advance, and she was earning more than she ever had in her part-time marketing job. The irony wasn't lost on her that losing everything had led her to discover her true calling. Emma's reputation spread throughout Riverside Falls and neighboring towns as the financial consultant who specialized in helping women rebuild their lives after major transitions. She began offering group workshops at the community center, teaching budgeting, debt management, and investment basics to women going through divorces, dealing with widowhood, or facing sudden single parenthood. Financial independence isn't just about money, she would tell her audiences. It's about reclaiming your power and your future. Her sessions were always packed, with women driving from towns an hour away to attend. Emma found deep satisfaction in transforming her own pain into a source of healing and empowerment for others. Michael's attempt to contact Emma became increasingly frequent and desperate. Her phone showed 17 missed calls from him in 1 week alone. The voicemail started apologetic and evolved into pleading. "Emma, please, I just need to talk to you. I know I messed up, but we need to discuss Lily's future." Then they became more urgent. "Pick up the phone, Emma. This is about our daughter." Emma listened to each message with a mixture of anger, sadness, and something she didn't want to acknowledge, a tiny part of her that still missed the man she had loved for 12 years. But she held firm to her boundary, directing all communication through her attorney. She wasn't ready to face Michael directly, and she suspected his motivations weren't entirely pure. When Michael showed up at her apartment door one evening, Emma's heart raced with a combination of panic and anger. "You can't just appear here uninvited," she said firmly, keeping the chain lock engaged. The lawyer said all communication goes through him. Michael looked haggard, his usually neat appearance disheveled. "I'm not here about the divorce," he pleaded. "I'm here about Lily. She's my daughter too, and I have rights." Emma's jaw tightened as she replied, "You gave up your rights to make demands when you chose Jessica over your family. If you want to see Lily, follow the proper legal channels." She closed the door, her hands shaking with adrenaline. It was the first time she had stood up to Michael so directly, and despite her fear, she felt a surge of pride in her newfound strength. Jessica's attempts at reconciliation came through a barrage of text messages that Emma couldn't bring herself to delete or answer. "Emma, I know you hate me, but please let me explain. I never meant for this to happen. I miss my sister. I miss our family. Can we please talk? I made the biggest mistake of my life. I'm so sorry." Emma read each message multiple times, her emotions swinging between rage and heartbreak. This was the sister who had been her maid of honor, who had helped her pick out Lily's first baby clothes, who had been her closest confidant for years. The betrayal felt even deeper than Michael's because Jessica had known exactly how much damage she was causing. Emma saved the messages but never responded, unsure if she would ever be ready to hear Jessica's explanations or apologies. During her morning prayer sessions, Emma found herself wrestling with the Christian principle of forgiveness in ways she had never experienced before. "God, I want to forgive them, but I don't know how to forget," she prayed honestly. "Every time I think I'm making progress, something reminds me of what they did, and the anger comes flooding back." She had always thought forgiveness was a simple decision, but now she understood it was a complex process that required divine help. Some mornings, she genuinely felt peace toward Michael and Jessica. Other days, the hurt felt as fresh as the night she discovered their betrayal. Emma was learning that forgiveness wasn't a destination, but a journey, and she was committed to walking it even when the path felt unclear. By the end of her 3rd month in business, Emma's financial records showed something that seemed almost miraculous given where she had started. She had not only covered her basic living expenses, but had also begun building an emergency fund and paying down the credit card debt Michael had left her with. Her client base had grown to over 40 women, and she was booking corporate workshops with local businesses interested in offering financial wellness programs to their female employees. "I'm actually making it," she whispered to herself while reviewing the numbers. For someone who had been left with almost nothing, this level of success felt like a gift from God, proof that her devastation was being transformed into something beautiful and purposeful. Lily's adjustment to their new life had been remarkably resilient, though Emma knew her daughter was processing the family changes in her own 8-year-old way. "Mommy, are you happier now than when we lived with Daddy?" Lily asked one evening while they cuddled on their second-hand couch. The question caught Emma off guard with its perceptive innocence. After a moment of reflection, Emma answered honestly, "I'm sadder about some things and happier about others, sweetheart. I'm sad that our family changed, but I'm happy that we're learning how strong we can be together." Lily nodded thoughtfully and then added, "I think you smile more now when you're working on your computer." Emma realized with surprise that her daughter was right. Despite all the pain, she was finding genuine joy in her new purpose. Emma's growing confidence led her to attend her first business networking event at the Riverside Falls Chamber of Commerce. Walking into the room full of established professionals, she felt a familiar flutter of anxiety, but it was different now, anticipation rather than fear. Emma Mitchell, New Beginnings Financial. She introduced herself to other attendees, and the response was overwhelmingly positive. Several business owners asked for her card, interested in her workshops for their employees. "You're doing important work," commented Dr. Sarah Davidson, a local therapist. "Financial stress destroys relationships and mental health. What you're offering is healing on multiple levels." Emma left the event with a folder full of new business cards and a calendar full of potential opportunities. As Emma prepared for another busy day of client consultations and workshop planning, she caught sight of herself in the bathroom mirror and was startled by what she saw. The woman looking back at her had the same face, but everything else had changed. Her posture was straighter, her eyes brighter, and there was a sense of purpose in her expression that had been missing for years, maybe even during her marriage. She wasn't the same woman who had been devastated by betrayal just months ago, nor was she the woman who had defined herself primarily through her roles as wife and mother. She was becoming someone entirely new, a woman who had discovered her own strength, her own talents, and her own worth. The transformation was so profound that Emma barely recognized herself, and for the first time in her adult life, she genuinely liked the woman she was becoming. 6 months after losing everything, Emma stood in front of her very own office space on Main Street, watching the sign installer position New Beginnings Financial above the entrance. The modest 2-room suite represented a milestone she had never imagined achieving so quickly. Her business had grown so rapidly that working from her apartment was no longer feasible, especially with clients driving from 3 neighboring counties to seek her services. "It's really happening," she whispered to herself, remembering the night she had fled her home with nothing but a suitcase and a broken heart. The contrast between that devastated woman and the confident business owner she had become felt almost surreal. Grace stood beside her, beaming with pride. "I always knew you had it in you," Grace said, squeezing Emma's hand. "You just needed the right circumstances to discover it." Emma's reputation as a speaker had grown alongside her consulting business, leading to invitations to address larger audiences throughout the region. At the Western Massachusetts Women's Empowerment Conference, she stood before 300 women sharing her message of financial independence and emotional resilience. 18 months ago, I thought my life was over, she told the audience, her voice strong and clear. I had defined myself entirely through my relationships, as a wife, as a mother, as a sister. When those relationships were shattered, I thought I had lost everything. But what I discovered was that I hadn't lost myself. I had simply never taken the time to find out who I really was. The standing ovation that followed brought tears to her eyes, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming realization that her pain had become a source of hope for countless other women. Lily's pride in her mother's success had become evident to everyone around her, especially her teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, who called Emma with a heartwarming update. "I had to share this with you," Mrs. Rodriguez said during their phone conversation. Today, during show and tell, Lily stood up and announced that her mommy helps ladies learn how to be strong with their money. She said you have your own office now and that people come from far away to learn from you. Then she added, "My mommy is the bravest person in the whole world because she helps people even when she's still healing her own heart." I've never heard an 8-year-old speak with such insight and pride. Emma felt her chest swell with emotion, realizing that her journey of rebuilding hadn't just transformed her own life. It was showing Lily what strength and resilience looked like in action. Meanwhile, Michael's accounting firm was experiencing significant turbulence that went far beyond the personal gossip surrounding his divorce. 3 major clients had terminated their contracts in recent months, citing concerns about character and judgment. Corporate speak for their discomfort with the scandal surrounding his personal life. In the tight-knit business community of Riverside Falls, reputation mattered enormously, and Michael's public affair with his sister-in-law had damaged his professional credibility. His remaining clients were asking more questions, requesting more documentation, and showing less trust in his recommendations. The financial pressure was mounting, and for the first time since starting his practice, Michael was genuinely worried about his business survival. The irony that his personal choices were destroying his professional life wasn't lost on him, especially when he thought about how Emma's business was thriving while his crumbled. The stress of Michael's declining business began taking a serious toll on his relationship with Jessica, revealing cracks that had been hidden during their initial passionate phase. "This isn't what I signed up for," Jessica snapped during one of their increasingly frequent arguments. "When we got together, you were successful and confident. Now you're stressed all the time, and I'm tired of dealing with the fallout from our choices." Her words stung because they contained an uncomfortable truth. Jessica had been attracted to the stability and success that Michael represented, not necessarily to Michael himself. "You said you loved me," Michael replied, his voice hollow with realization. "I thought I did," Jessica admitted with brutal honesty, "but maybe I just loved the idea of taking something that belonged to Emma. Maybe I was jealous of what she had, not really interested in building something with you." The conversation left both of them questioning whether their relationship had been built on genuine love or simply the thrill of forbidden attraction. In stark contrast to the chaos in Michael and Jessica's relationship, Emma had found a level of inner peace that surprised even her closest friends. Her morning routine now included 30 minutes of meditation and prayer, during which she genuinely felt gratitude for the path her life had taken. The anger and bitterness that had once consumed her thoughts had been gradually replaced by a deep sense of purpose and contentment. "I never could have imagined that the worst thing that ever happened to me would lead to the best version of myself," she wrote in her journal. "God really does work all things together for good, even when we can't see his plan in the moment." This wasn't the forced positivity of someone trying to convince herself she was okay. It was the authentic peace of someone who had genuinely found meaning in her suffering and transformation in her trials. Grace marveled at the transformation she witnessed in her best friend during their weekly coffee dates at Penny's Diner. "Sometimes I look at you and can't believe you're the same person who showed up at my door 6 months ago," Grace observed, stirring her coffee thoughtfully. "That night, you were so broken I wasn't sure you'd ever put the pieces back together. Now look at you. You're literally glowing with confidence and purpose." Emma smiled, understanding exactly what Grace meant. "I think I had to be completely broken down before I could be built back up the right way," she replied. "I was living someone else's idea of who I should be for so long that I never discovered who I actually was. This forced me to find out, and I like who I found." Their conversation was interrupted by Margaret Shun, one of Emma's first clients, who stopped by their table to express her gratitude. "Emma, I just wanted you to know that the budget plan you helped me create has completely changed my life. I've never felt so in control of my finances." Emma's dedication to her clients went far beyond typical business relationships. She genuinely cared about each woman's success and followed up regularly on their progress. Her office walls were covered with thank you cards and photos from clients who had achieved financial milestones with her guidance. "Your support helped me buy my first house as a single mom," read one card from Sandra Williams. "I got promoted because I finally understood my worth and negotiated for it," wrote another from Patricia Lopez. Emma kept every card and letter, not out of ego, but because they reminded her daily that her work had real impact on real lives. These women weren't just clients. They were fellow travelers on the journey from brokenness to wholeness, and Emma felt honored to be part of their transformation stories. The late nights and weekend workshops didn't feel like work when she could see the tangible difference she was making in women's lives across the region. Despite her business success, Emma remained fiercely protective of her time with Lily, establishing clear boundaries between work and motherhood that she had never maintained during her marriage. Their evening dinners together became sacred time. No phones, no work talk, just mother and daughter connecting over the day's events. "Tell me the best part of your day and the hardest part" became their dinner ritual, and Emma was amazed by the wisdom and insight that came from her 8-year-old daughter. "My best part was when Tommy shared his crayons with me," Lily shared one evening. "And my hardest part was when Madison said her parents are getting divorced and she was really sad." These conversations reminded Emma daily that while her professional success was fulfilling, being Lily's mother remained her most important role. The guilt she had once felt about the family disruption was gradually being replaced by pride in the resilient, compassionate child she was raising. As Emma stood at her office window watching the sun set over downtown Riverside Falls, she reflected on the incredible journey that had brought her to this moment. 6 months ago, she had been a dependent wife with no real sense of her own capabilities or worth. Tonight, she was a successful entrepreneur who had built something meaningful from nothing, a respected speaker who inspired other women, and a mother who was modeling strength and resilience for her daughter. The woman who had once begged her husband not to leave had been replaced by someone who couldn't imagine needing anyone else to complete her. This transformation wasn't just about financial success or professional recognition. It was about discovering her authentic self and learning to love that person completely. For the first time in her adult life, Emma felt genuinely excited about the future because she knew that whatever came next, she had the strength, skills, and faith to handle it with grace and confidence. 8 months after fleeing her old life with nothing but a suitcase, Emma stood in front of a charming 3-bedroom colonial house on Elm Street, holding the keys to her new home. The house wasn't large or luxurious, but it was hers, purchased entirely with the income from her thriving business. "We really own this whole house, Mommy?" Lily asked in wonder, running her small hands along the white picket fence. "Every single brick and board," Emma replied, her voice thick with emotion. The mortgage payment was well within her budget. She had a substantial emergency fund, and for the first time in her life, she felt the security that came from true financial independence. Grace helped them carry boxes from the moving truck, shaking her head in amazement. "A year ago you had nothing, and now look at this," she marveled. "You've built something incredible, Emma. Your parents would be so proud." The mention of her deceased parents brought tears to Emma's eyes. She wished they could see how their daughter had risen from the ashes of betrayal to create something beautiful. The process of decorating their new home became a joyful collaboration between mother and daughter, with Emma deliberately including Lily in every decision. They spent weekends browsing furniture stores and thrift shops, looking for pieces that felt warm and welcoming rather than expensive and impressive. "What color should we paint the kitchen?" Emma asked, spreading paint samples across their new dining table. "Yellow," Lily declared immediately. "Like sunshine, so we'll always feel happy when we're cooking together." Emma smiled, realizing that her daughter's innocent wisdom often provided the perfect perspective. They chose soft blues for the living room, lavender for Lily's bedroom, and sage green for Emma's sanctuary. Each room reflected their new beginning, bright, hopeful, and authentically theirs. The house gradually filled with the warmth of a real home, not the tense perfection that had characterized the house she had shared with Michael. Meanwhile, Michael's world was collapsing in ways he couldn't have imagined when he chose Jessica over his family. The final blow came when Riverside Manufacturing, his largest remaining client, terminated their contract after the company president's wife expressed discomfort with the moral character of their accountant. With that loss, Michael could no longer sustain his practice and was forced to close Mitchell & Associates Accounting after 8 years of building the business. His office stood empty except for boxes of files and the memories of what had once been a promising career. The man who had once smugly assumed he could have everything, his wife's stability and his sister-in-law's excitement, now had neither security nor passion. The weight of his choices pressed down on him like a physical burden, and for the first time since the affair began, Michael truly understood what he had thrown away. Jessica's departure came with the brutal efficiency of someone who had never truly committed to the relationship in the first place. "I can't do this anymore, Michael," she announced while throwing clothes into her suitcase. "I thought you were going to take care of me, but instead I'm watching you fall apart. This isn't the life I wanted." Her words cut deeper than any physical blow because they revealed the transactional nature of what he had believed was love. "You said you loved me," Michael pleaded, his voice breaking. "You said we were meant to be together." Jessica paused in her packing, looking at him with something that might have been pity. "I loved the excitement of the affair, the thrill of taking something that wasn't mine. But loving you? I don't think I ever really knew you well enough to love you. I was in love with the idea of winning against Emma." The honesty was devastating because it forced Michael to confront the possibility that their entire relationship had been built on jealousy and competition rather than genuine affection. After Jessica left for her parents' house in California, Michael found himself completely alone in the house that had once been Emma's pride and joy. The silence was deafening, broken only by the ticking of the grandfather clock that Emma had inherited from her grandmother. Every room held memories of the family he had destroyed. Lily's artwork still hung on the refrigerator, Emma's gardening gloves still sat by the back door, and her favorite coffee mug remained in the cabinet where she had left it. The contrast between his current isolation and the warm family life he had once taken for granted was almost unbearable. He walked through rooms that felt like a museum of his former happiness, realizing with crushing clarity that he had traded a lifetime of genuine love and partnership for a few months of shallow excitement. The house that had once been filled with Emma's laughter and Lily's giggles now echoed with the hollow sound of his own footsteps and the weight of his devastating mistakes. Desperation finally drove Michael to attempt the call he had been both dreading and longing to make for months. His hands shook as he scrolled to Emma's contact information, knowing that this conversation could determine the trajectory of his future. When her voicemail greeting played, professional, confident, completely different from the soft, accommodating tone he remembered, Michael almost hung up without leaving a message. But his dire circumstances forced him to swallow his pride and speak the words that felt like admitting total defeat. "Emma, it's Michael. I know you don't want to hear from me, and I understand why. But I'm in serious trouble, and I don't have anyone else to turn to. Jessica's gone, the business is finished, and I'm about to lose the house. I know I have no right to ask for anything after what I did to you and Lily, but I'm desperate. I don't know what else to do." His voice cracked as he continued. "I've lost everything, Emma. Everything that mattered. And I finally understand that I lost it all the night I chose Jessica over our family. If there's any part of you that remembers what we once meant to each other, please consider helping me. I'll understand if you can't, but I had to ask." Emma listened to Michael's desperate voicemail 3 times, each replay stirring a complex mixture of emotions she thought she had resolved. Part of her felt vindicated. The man who had so cruelly dismissed her was now experiencing the consequences of his choices. But a larger part, the part shaped by her faith in her own journey of healing, felt genuine compassion for his suffering. She thought about the Michael she had married, the man who had once been kind, responsible, and loving before whatever midlife crisis or personal demons had led him astray. What would Jesus do? She whispered to herself, knowing that the answer challenged every human instinct for justice and self-protection. The easy response would be to ignore his plea and let him face the natural consequences of his actions. The Christ-like response would be to find a way to help without compromising her own healing and boundaries. Emma spent hours in prayer that night, wrestling with the tension between mercy and wisdom, between forgiveness and enabling. Pastor Benjamin listened thoughtfully as Emma shared her dilemma about Michael's request for help, understanding the spiritual complexity of her situation. Forgiveness doesn't mean you have to rescue someone from the consequences of their choices, he counseled gently. There's a difference between forgiving someone in your heart and putting yourself in a position to be hurt again. He opened his Bible to relevant passages about wisdom and discernment. God calls us to be as wise as serpents and as gentle as doves. Helping Michael might be an act of Christian love, but it needs to be done in a way that protects your own healing and doesn't enable destructive patterns. Pastor Benjamin helped Emma understand that she could respond with love without sacrificing her boundaries, and that sometimes the most loving thing was to allow someone to fully experience the consequences of their actions. Pray about it, he advised, and trust that God will show you the right path. Whatever you decide, make sure it comes from a place of strength and wisdom, not from guilt or manipulation. That night, Emma knelt beside her bed in the house she had built with her own hands and earnings, pouring her heart out to God about the impossible decision before her. I thought I had forgiven him completely, she prayed, but now I'm being tested to see if that forgiveness is real or just theoretical. Show me what true forgiveness looks like in this situation. Help me respond with wisdom, not emotion. If you want me to help him, give me clear direction on how to do it without compromising my own healing or Lily's stability. She prayed for Michael's genuine repentance and transformation, for Jessica's eventual healing, and for her own continued strength and discernment. The prayer session lasted over an hour, and by the end, Emma felt a strange peace settling over her spirit. The path forward wasn't completely clear yet, but she sensed that God was preparing her heart for whatever decision would best serve his purposes and her family's well-being. As Emma sat in her home office looking out at the twinkling lights of Riverside Falls, she reflected on the incredible journey that had brought her to this crossroads. A year ago, she had been a woman who defined herself entirely through her relationships and who had no idea of her own capabilities or worth. Tonight, she was a successful entrepreneur, a confident single mother, and a woman who had discovered her authentic self through the crucible of betrayal and loss. Michael's plea for help represented more than just a request for financial assistance. It was a test of everything she had learned about forgiveness, wisdom, and grace. The decisions she made would define not just his future, but also who she had become through this transformative journey. Emma picked up her phone, knowing that whatever choice she made would be guided by the hard-won wisdom and deep faith that had carried her from the depths of devastation to the heights of authentic success and inner peace. After 3 days of prayer and careful consideration, Emma made a decision that would have shocked anyone who knew the full extent of Michael's betrayal. She drove to First National Bank and arranged for several of Michael's most pressing bills to be paid anonymously through a third-party service. His mortgage payment, utilities, and car payment were quietly settled, preventing immediate foreclosure and repossession. Emma was careful to structure the assistance so that Michael couldn't trace it back to her. She used a legal financial services company that specialized in anonymous charitable giving. "I want to help without enabling," she explained to the banker, "and without opening a door for manipulation or expectation." The total amount was significant but manageable from her business profits, and Emma felt a profound peace about the decision. This wasn't about rescuing Michael from all consequences, but about preventing him from losing everything while he worked to rebuild his life and his character. Michael's confusion was evident when he opened his mortgage statement to find a paid-in-full stamp across the balance due. Initially, he assumed it was a banking error and called the mortgage company immediately. "No, sir, this isn't an error," the customer service representative confirmed. "Your account shows a payment received through Riverside Financial Services yesterday. The payment was made in full and on time." Similar calls to his utility companies and car loan provider yielded the same mysterious results. All bills current, all payments received, no explanations available. Michael spent hours trying to trace the source of the payments, calling banks and financial institutions, but every lead ended in professional confidentiality policies. Someone had rescued him from immediate financial disaster. But who? And why? The mystery consumed his thoughts as he tried to figure out which friend, family member, or business associate might have intervened on his behalf. Meanwhile, 3,000 miles away in San Francisco, Jessica sat in her childhood bedroom at her parents' house, staring at Emma's phone number for the fourth time that week. The guilt and regret that had been building since she left Michael finally overwhelmed her defenses, and she dialed before she could lose her nerve. When Emma's professional voicemail greeted her, Jessica almost hung up, but forced herself to speak through her tears. "Emma, it's Jessica. I know you probably never want to hear from me again, and I understand why. I'm in California at Mom and Dad's house, and I've had a lot of time to think about what I did to you, to Michael, to our family. I need you to know that I'm not calling to ask for forgiveness. I don't deserve that. I'm calling because you deserve to hear the truth about what really happened, and because I need to take full responsibility for the destruction I caused. Would you be willing to meet with me if I came back to Riverside Falls? Not for my sake, but because I think you need to hear what I have to say." Emma played Jessica's voicemail message 3 times, analyzing every nuance of her sister's voice for signs of manipulation or genuine remorse. What struck her most was how different Jessica sounded. Gone was the defiant confidence that had characterized their last confrontation, replaced by something that sounded like authentic humility and regret. Emma had been dreading this moment since the affair began, knowing that eventually she would have to face her sister and decide whether their relationship could ever be salvaged. The practical part of her mind warned against reopening old wounds, but her heart recognized something in Jessica's voice that she had never heard before: true accountability. After consulting with Pastor Benjamin and spending another sleepless night in prayer, Emma made a decision that surprised even herself. She called Jessica back and agreed to meet, but with clear conditions. The meeting would be in a public place, it would be limited to 2 hours, and Emma reserved the right to leave at any point if the conversation became manipulative or hurtful. The coffee shop on the outskirts of town felt like neutral territory when Emma arrived to find Jessica already seated at a corner table, looking smaller and more fragile than Emma remembered. The sister who had once carried herself with confident defiance now appeared genuinely broken, her eyes red from recent tears and her hands shaking as she lifted her coffee cup. "Thank you for coming," Jessica began, her voice barely above a whisper. "I wasn't sure you would." Emma studied her sister's face, looking for signs of the manipulative charm that had once been Jessica's trademark, but found only raw vulnerability. "I almost didn't," Emma replied honestly, "but I realize that I need to hear what you have to say, not for your healing, but for mine. I can't fully close this chapter of my life without understanding why you chose to destroy our family." The conversation that followed would test every boundary Emma had established and every principle of forgiveness she had learned through her faith journey. Jessica's confession poured out like water from a broken dam, revealing depths of insecurity and jealousy that Emma had never suspected existed in her younger sister. "I was so jealous of you, Emma," Jessica sobbed, her carefully applied makeup now streaked with tears. "You had everything I thought I wanted: a loving husband, a beautiful daughter, a stable home. I felt like such a failure in comparison. My relationships never lasted, my career was going nowhere, and I was living paycheck to paycheck while you seemed to have it all figured out." Jessica's voice cracked as she continued. "When Michael started confiding in me about feeling unappreciated and taken for granted, I saw an opportunity to take something that was yours. It wasn't about loving him. It was about proving to myself that I could be chosen over you. I wanted to feel special and desired, even if it meant destroying everything you had built." The brutal honesty of Jessica's admission hit Emma like a physical blow, revealing that the affair had been less about passion and more about sibling rivalry taken to its most destructive extreme. "I seduced him, Emma," Jessica continued, her voice gaining strength as she committed to complete honesty. He was vulnerable and confused about his life direction, but I was the one who pursued him. I was the one who suggested we keep meeting in secret. I was the one who pushed for him to choose between us. I manipulated his midlife crisis and used his temporary weakness to get what I thought I wanted. Jessica looked directly into Emma's eyes for the first time since the conversation began. Michael bears responsibility for his choices, but I was the architect of the affair. I destroyed my sister's marriage because I was too immature and selfish to build my own life. There's no excuse for what I did, and I don't expect forgiveness. I just needed you to know that none of it was your fault, and all of it was mine. Emma sat in stunned silence, processing not just the words, but the complete transformation evident in her sister's demeanor. This wasn't the self-centered young woman who had stolen her husband. This was someone who had been genuinely broken by the consequences of her actions and was finally taking full accountability for the destruction she had caused. Emma's response surprised both sisters and demonstrated the profound spiritual growth that had occurred during her months of rebuilding. "Jessica," she said quietly, her voice steady and calm, "what you did was terrible, and it caused damage that will take years to fully heal. But sitting here, listening to you take responsibility without making excuses or try to manipulate my emotions, this is the sister I remember from when we were children. This is the Jessica I loved before life made us competitive instead of supportive." Emma paused, choosing her words carefully. "I forgive you, not because you deserve it, and not because it erases the consequences of your choices, but because holding on to anger was poisoning my own healing. I've learned that forgiveness isn't about the person who hurt you. It's about freeing yourself to move forward." Jessica stared at Emma in disbelief, having prepared for anger, accusations, and rejection, but not for grace. "How can you forgive me after what I took from you?" she whispered. Emma smiled sadly, "Because what you took from me wasn't as important as what I found in myself after you took it. You accidentally set me free to become who I was always meant to be." Emma's forgiveness came with clear boundaries that reflected her hard-earned wisdom about healthy relationships. "I forgive you, Jessica, but forgiveness doesn't mean we go back to the way things were," she explained with gentle firmness. "Trust is earned over time through consistent actions, not rebuilt through a single conversation. If you're serious about changing your life and becoming someone worthy of forgiveness, then prove it through your choices going forward." Emma outlined her expectations. Jessica would need to demonstrate genuine transformation through therapy, accountability, and service to others. Any future relationship between the sisters would be built slowly and with clear boundaries. "I'm not interested in being your project or your way of feeling better about yourself," Emma stated clearly. "But if you're genuinely committed to becoming a better person, then maybe someday we can have a real sisterly relationship again." Jessica nodded through fresh tears, understanding that Emma's conditional forgiveness was actually a gift of hope, a chance to earn back what she had thrown away through selfishness and jealousy. As Emma walked out of the coffee shop and into the cool evening air, she felt a weight lifting from her shoulders that she hadn't even realized she was carrying. The conversation with Jessica had been emotionally draining but spiritually liberating, proving to herself that her journey of forgiveness was authentic rather than theoretical. She had looked her betrayer in the eye, heard the full truth of the betrayal, and chosen grace over vengeance, not from weakness, but from the kind of strength that can only come from deep faith and hard-won wisdom. Driving home to her beautiful house and sleeping daughter, Emma marveled at how God had used the worst experience of her life to reveal the best parts of her character. She had discovered that she was capable of forgiveness even when it wasn't deserved, grace even when it wasn't earned, and love even when it wasn't reciprocated. The woman who had once defined herself through others' approval and affection now knew that her worth came from something far more stable and eternal than human relationships. Michael's investigation into his mysterious benefactor took an unexpected turn when he visited First National Bank to thank them for their discretion. "I appreciate your confidentiality policies," he told the bank manager, "but I really need to know who helped me so I can express my gratitude properly." The manager consulted his records one more time and made a surprising discovery. Actually, Mr. Mitchell, the payment wasn't made through our standard anonymous service. It appears to have been processed through New Beginnings Financial. Perhaps you should contact them directly. Michael's face went pale as the pieces fell into place. New Beginnings Financial, Emma's company. The business she had built from nothing while he lost everything. The irony was devastating and humbling beyond words. The drive to Emma's office felt like the longest 20 minutes of Michael's life. His emotions swung wildly between gratitude, shame, and disbelief. Emma, the woman he had betrayed, abandoned, and left financially destitute, had been the one to save him from complete ruin. The woman he had dismissed as dependent and helpless had become successful enough to rescue him from his own failures. As he pulled into the parking lot of her professional building, Michael tried to prepare for a conversation he had no idea how to approach. How do you thank someone for grace you don't deserve? How do you face someone whose generosity exposes the depth of your own selfishness? When Emma emerged from her office building, she found Michael waiting by her car, and what happened next shocked both of them. Without warning, Michael dropped to his knees in the parking lot, tears streaming down his face. "I know it was you," he said, his voice breaking with emotion. "I know you paid my bills when you had every right to let me lose everything. I don't understand why you would help me after what I did to you and Lily." Emma stood frozen, unprepared for such a raw display of remorse from the man who had once coldly chosen her sister over their family. "Get up, Michael," she said quietly. "People are watching." But Michael remained on his knees, his pride completely shattered by the weight of her undeserved kindness. Emma gently helped Michael to his feet, her touch devoid of romantic feeling but filled with human compassion. "I didn't help you to humiliate you or to prove a point," she said softly. "I helped you because my faith teaches me that mercy isn't something we earn, it's something we receive as a gift, and then we're called to give it to others." Michael wiped his eyes, struggling to comprehend the transformation in the woman before him. This wasn't the dependent, people-pleasing wife he remembered. This was someone who had discovered her own strength and chosen to use it for grace rather than revenge. "The Emma I married was wonderful," he whispered, "but the woman you've become is extraordinary. I'm so sorry for what I put you through." "I need you to understand something, Michael," Emma continued, her voice steady and clear. "I didn't save your house to save our marriage. That chapter of our lives is closed forever. I helped you because Lily deserves to have a father who isn't destroyed by his own poor choices, and because I learned that forgiveness isn't about the person who hurt you. It's about who you choose to become in response to the hurt." Michael nodded, finally understanding that Emma's grace came from strength, not weakness. "I know I can never undo what I did," he replied. "I threw away the best thing in my life for something that was never real. Jessica and we were just two broken people using each other to avoid dealing with our own problems." Emma shared the story of her transformation with a transparency that left Michael astounded. "When you left me for Jessica, I thought my life was over. I had no idea who I was outside of being your wife and Lily's mother. But losing everything forced me to find out who Emma really was, and I discovered that I'm stronger, more capable, and more resilient than I ever imagined." She gestured toward her office building. "I built this business from nothing, Michael. I'm helping dozens of women every month rebuild their lives after crisis. Your betrayal didn't destroy me, it revealed me." Michael listened with growing amazement, realizing that while he had been losing everything, Emma had been gaining everything that truly mattered. "I want to see Lily," Michael said, his voice filled with longing and regret. "I know I don't deserve to be her father after how I abandoned both of you, but she's my daughter and I love her." Emma considered his request carefully before responding. "Lily asks about you sometimes. She doesn't understand why you chose Jessica over us, and honestly, I don't have a good answer for her. If you want to be part of her life again, it will be on my terms with clear boundaries, and it will require you to prove that you've genuinely changed." Michael nodded eagerly, grateful for any opportunity to rebuild a relationship with his daughter. "I'll do whatever it takes, Emma. I'll go to counseling. I'll follow any rules you set. I just want the chance to be the father Lily deserves." Emma outlined her conditions with the precision of someone who had learned the importance of clear boundaries. If you want to rebuild a relationship with Lily, you'll need to demonstrate stability and genuine change over time. That means consistent therapy, steady employment, and no romantic drama that could disrupt her life again. We'll start with supervised visits. And if you prove yourself trustworthy, we can gradually increase your involvement in her life. Michael accepted every condition without argument, understanding that Emma's protectiveness came from love for their daughter, not vindictiveness toward him. I want you to know that I'm grateful not just for the financial help, but for the chance to earn back some small part of what I threw away, he said. I don't expect us to be friends, but I hope someday you can see me as someone worthy of co-parenting our daughter. Their conversation concluded with a handshake that felt like the closing of one chapter and the tentative opening of another. I forgive you, Michael, Emma said as they prepared to part ways. Not because you've earned it, but because holding on to anger was preventing me from becoming who God intended me to be. Our marriage is over, and it can never be repaired, but maybe we can build something new, a respectful co-parenting relationship that puts Lily's needs first. Michael felt the weight of genuine forgiveness for the first time since his world began collapsing. Thank you, Emma, for everything, for the grace you've shown me, for the second chance with Lily, and for showing me what real strength looks like. I'll spend the rest of my life trying to become worthy of the kindness you've shown me today. As Emma watched Michael drive away, she felt a profound sense of completion wash over her. The anger, hurt, and bitterness that had once consumed her thoughts were truly gone, replaced by genuine peace and compassion. She had looked her betrayer in the eye, witnessed his genuine remorse, and chosen grace over justice, not from weakness, but from the kind of strength that can only come through faith and personal transformation. Walking back in her office building, Emma marveled at the journey that had brought her to this moment. The woman who had once begged her husband not to leave had become someone who could offer forgiveness and second chances from a position of complete emotional and financial independence. God had indeed worked all things together for good, transforming her greatest tragedy into her most powerful testimony of grace, resilience, and redemption. 1 year later, Emma stood in her expanded office suite, watching her team of 5 financial consultants help clients throughout the region. New Beginnings Financial had grown beyond her wildest dreams, with satellite offices in 3 neighboring towns and a waiting list of women seeking her specialized services. Mrs. Mitchell, the Channel 8 News crew is here for your interview about the Women's Economic Empowerment Grant, her assistant announced. Emma had been selected to receive a state grant recognizing her contribution to helping women achieve financial independence after life transitions. As she prepared for the interview, Emma reflected on the incredible journey from broken housewife to respected businesswoman and community leader. Lily had blossomed into a confident, compassionate 9-year-old who moved easily between her mother's house and her father's apartment for weekend visits. The stability Emma had created allowed Lily to thrive academically and socially, and the little girl often expressed pride in her mother's work. "My mom helps ladies be brave with their money," Lily told her teacher during a career day presentation. The trauma of her parents' divorce had been healed through consistent love, clear boundaries, and the security of a mother who had transformed pain into purpose. Emma watched her daughter with deep satisfaction, knowing that Lily was learning lessons about resilience, forgiveness, and self-worth that would serve her throughout her life. Michael had rebuilt his life with humility and determination, working as a financial advisor for a small firm while attending therapy twice a week. His modest apartment was a far cry from the suburban home he had shared with Emma, but it represented honest work and genuine effort to become a better man. The supervised visits with Lily had gradually evolved into weekend stays, and Michael treasured every moment with his daughter. He had learned to find joy in simple pleasures, helping Lily with homework, taking her to the park, listening to her stories about school. The man who had once taken his family for granted now understood the precious gift of being trusted with his daughter's well-being again. Jessica had returned to Riverside Falls 6 months earlier, but her reintegration into the community was markedly different from her previous lifestyle. She worked as a volunteer coordinator at the county children's home, dedicating her time to helping kids who had experienced family trauma. The work was emotionally challenging but deeply meaningful, forcing Jessica to confront her own selfishness while serving children who had experienced real abandonment. Her relationship with Emma remained cautious but gradually warming, built on Jessica's consistent demonstration of genuine change rather than empty promises. I'm learning that real love means putting someone else's needs before your own desires, Jessica had told Emma during one of their monthly coffee meetings. The restoration of the sisterly relationship between Emma and Jessica had been slow but genuine, built on Jessica's consistent actions rather than words. They now work together on a community project providing financial literacy workshops for teenage girls, combining Emma's expertise with Jessica's passion for helping at-risk youth. "I never thought I'd see you two together again," Grace had observed during a recent dinner. "But watching you work together to help other girls avoid the mistakes Jessica made, it's beautiful." Emma smiled, understanding that their relationship would never return to the innocent closeness of childhood, but it had evolved into something deeper, a bond forged through forgiveness, accountability, and shared purpose. Pastor Benjamin had invited Emma to share her testimony at First Baptist Church's anniversary service, and she stood before the congregation with the poise of someone who had discovered her authentic voice. 18 months ago, I thought betrayal was the end of my story, she began, her voice clear and confident. I believed that my worth came from being chosen by someone else, that my identity was defined by my relationships. But God used the most painful experience of my life to show me who I really was, not someone who needed to be completed by another person, but someone who was already whole and valuable in his eyes. The congregation listened with rapt attention as Emma shared how faith, forgiveness, and hard work had transformed her tragedy into triumph. "I learned that forgiveness isn't about the person who hurt you," Emma continued, her voice gaining strength. "It's about who you choose to become in response to the hurt. I could have chosen bitterness, revenge, and self-pity. Instead, I chose to trust that God had a purpose for my pain." She gestured toward the audience where several of her clients sat with their families. "Today, I have the privilege of helping women discover their own strength after life's storms. My business isn't just about financial consulting. It's about showing women that they are capable of more than they ever imagined. The betrayal that nearly destroyed me became the foundation for a life I never could have planned but wouldn't trade for anything." Emma's testimony concluded with a message that resonated throughout the sanctuary. If you're in the middle of your own storm right now, I want you to know that this isn't the end of your story. God specializes in taking our broken pieces and creating something beautiful from them. Your betrayal, your loss, your failure, these aren't permanent destinations. They're temporary stops on the journey to becoming who you were always meant to be. As Emma stepped down from the podium, the congregation rose in spontaneous applause, many wiping tears from their eyes. Several women approached her afterward, sharing their own stories of heartbreak and expressing hope that they too could find purpose in their pain. After the service, an unexpected moment of grace occurred when Emma, Michael, Jessica, and Lily found themselves together at the church fellowship dinner. What could have been awkward became a testament to the power of genuine forgiveness and transformation. They sat at the same table, not as a restored nuclear family, but as individuals who had learned to honor their shared history while embracing their new reality. Michael expressed gratitude for Emma's grace. Jessica shared updates about her volunteer work, and Lily chattered happily about her school projects. The conversation was natural and peaceful, demonstrating that healing doesn't always look like restoration, but sometimes looks like healthy boundaries built on mutual respect and genuine forgiveness. That evening, Emma sat in her home office surrounded by thank you letters from clients, photos of Lily's achievements, and business awards recognizing her community impact. The wall that had once held pictures of her marriage now displayed evidence of a life rebuilt on her own terms, a life of purpose, independence, and authentic relationships. As she prepared her notes for the next day's workshops, Emma marveled at the transformation that had occurred not just in her circumstances, but in her very identity. The woman who had once begged her husband not to leave had become someone who knew her own worth independent of anyone else's choices. She had learned that true security comes not from being chosen by someone else, but from choosing to become the person God intended her to be. Her story had become a testimony that the end of one dream can be the beginning of a purpose more beautiful than anything she could have imagined. We're watching from today. If this story of redemption and second chances touched your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe for more incredible stories that remind us that our worst moments don't define our final chapters.